Most probable voters in the United States now approve of President Donald Trump's job performance, according to a new poll. 50% approved while 49% disapproved. The Rasmussen Reports daily presidential tracking poll showed it was the first time Mr. Trump had hit 50% in the poll, which surveys 500 probable voters, since June 2017. Polls from earlier in the week had lower support for Mr. Trump, with Reuters, Ipsos putting him at 40%, and Quinnipiac at 37%. At the same stage of his presidency, the Rasmussen poll gave Barack Obama a 45% approval rating. In the last few days, Mr. Trump has made a high-profile push for making schools hard targets for gunmen, including supporting the arming of teachers. That came in the wake of America's worst-ever high school shooting when 17 people died in Florida last week. He continued those calls in a freewheeling, hour-long campaign-style speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference near Washington on Friday. At the biggest annual gathering of conservative activists, Mr. Trump abandoned his script, in which he had been expected to announce new sanctions on North Korea. Looking from the stage at an image of himself on a big screen, he said, "By the way, what a nice picture that is. Look at that. I'd love to watch that guy speak." Mr. Trump then turned around and put his hands on the hair at the back of his head, admiring it on the screen. He told the crowd, "Oh, I try like hell to hide that bald spot, folks. I work hard at it. It doesn't look bad. Hey, we are hanging in. We are hanging in. Together, we are hanging in." The president added, "By the way, you don't mind if I go off script a little bit, because, you know, it's sort of boring." In scenes reminiscent of his campaign rallies, Mr. Trump referred to crooked Hillary Clinton, his opponent in 2016, which sparked chants of "lock her up" from the crowd. At one point, a protester was removed after throwing a Russian flag towards the stage. The crowd of mostly young activists chanted, "USA, USA," as the protester was ejected by security. They were very gentle. "He was very obnoxious," Mr. Trump said. He then attacked the assembled media for spreading fake news, and vowed to build the wall 10 feet higher every time someone objected to it. Mr. Trump called Democrats crazed, and warned his supporters the Democrats will take away your Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. He warned complacency would lead to Republicans being clobbered in upcoming congressional elections in November. "Don't be complacent, because if the Democrats get in, they will repeal your tax cuts," he added. Mr. Trump asked the crowd of hundreds of people if they could have only one of tax cuts, or the Second Amendment. Which they would choose. The overwhelming majority cheered for the Second Amendment, and he nodded his approval. Mr. Trump added, "I think now we've proved I'm a conservative." He also publicly shamed an armed officer who failed to act during the Florida school shooting. Mr. Trump condemned Scott Peterson, a sheriff's deputy who was on duty and in uniform as the resource officer posted to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. It emerged that Mr. Peterson, 54, stood outside the building where the shooting happened for 4 minutes as Nicholas Cruz, 19, gunned down fellow teenagers. Mr. Trump said, "Deputy Sheriff Peterson. I guess his name is what he did. He's trained his whole life. When it came time to get in there and do something, he didn't have the courage as something happened. He heard it right from the beginning, so he certainly did a poor job." The U.S. president added that Mr. Peterson didn't act properly under pressure, or was a coward. He said the officer was not a credit to law enforcement. Mr. Trump added that he would rather have had teachers armed with concealed weapons at the scene. He suggested up to 20% of teachers, and school staff such as sports coaches, were gun adept, and could be armed. That would be more than 500,000 teachers. Mr. Trump said, "A teacher would have shot the hell out of him, Cruz, before he knew what happened. I'm telling you, that would work. These teachers love the students, and these teachers are talented with weaponry and with guns, and they, students, feel safe." Most probable voters in the United States now approve of President Donald Trump's job.